Welcome back to Unfit for Publication, which is auspiced by the Sydney Pride History Group. I'm Peter de Waal. In our last part of Unfit for Publication, you will remember, which was called Part 1, Setting the Scene. I showed you and talked about an overview of what's contained in Unfit for Publication. Today, I'm going to lift the lid of the treasure chest, which is Unfit for Publication. I'll introduce you to the different parts of Unfit for Publication which are included. Well, I've taken you now to the home page of Unfit for Publication. You will see that there are a number of parts, as I've called them. Let's go to the first one, Part 1, called Preliminaries. Once you drop down that menu, you'll find things like you usually find in books. Some examples are abbreviations that are used in the publication, acknowledgements of people who have been involved, the foreword, the online launch speech and photos, introduction, and there are quite a few more, but I think I've given you the idea of what the preliminaries include. Now we've actually arrived at Part 2, which is called the trials. Now the trials are obviously take place in the courts, different kind of courts we had, the Supreme Court, Quarter Sessions Court and the Police Court. Now you can see there are a large number of trials included there, and they were all transcribed by the contributor Peter Bonsall-Boone. What an amazing job he did. There are almost 1,400 and those have been uploaded. Trials included in Unfit for Publication can have up to 6 unique components: court depositions, judges' notebooks, newspaper reports, jail photos, illustrations, and the alphabetical inventory. And of course that's quite a long list, and I'll return to those and give you a bit more comment on them as we go along. Okay, having explored Part 2, the trials, we now go to Part 3. Seemed very logical to move from 2 to 3, doesn't it? Now, it's called Cesspools of Unheard of Vices. And this part is entirely dedicated to early Tasmanian convict documents. The delightful title for this part is drawn from the Reverend Thomas Beagley Naylor, his 1846 report on Norfolk Island's convict population. And he did this report and went there, and he discovered that at night indeed there was a cesspool of unheard of vices. You'll find much evidence about sodomy also in the colony in the Molesworth Committee Inquiry Report. Again, we move on to another part called peripheries, and of course they're on the edges, but most important still to be included in Unfit for Publication. So this provides the broader details pertaining to the treatment and number of sodomites in New South Wales mainly. Of very great interest to me it was to find details about the nautical school ship Vernon, which deals with the recruitment and institutional homosexuality. So we're still on the home page, and we've come to part 5, and I've called it Imposing Structures. These grand structures, which are the courthouses, were built to impress the people at the time. We're very fortunate that so many of these colonial architectural structures have survived. The weekly New South Wales Police Gazette was a very rich source in compiling Unfit for publication. The many details extracted by contributor Peter Trebilco from the weekly Gazette became the database illustrated on this slide. There is no doubt that the Unfit for Publication's alphabetical inventory is the largest of its kind in the world. It brings together many different details about offenders and etc. Many different data sets can be extracted from the New South Wales Police Gazette alphabetical inventory when it is completely uploaded. The versatility of the inventory lies in the many variables it includes. And to get a bit more of an idea what's actually included in the alphabetical inventory, I suggest you perhaps pause the video and have a closer look at the slide. We've now come to the judges' notebooks. The notebook is one of the 6 possible components included with a trial. It was referred to in an earlier slide, where I listed the 6 different components which can be included in a trial. It's a written observation during the trial. And again, being a rather complex slide, I suggest you pause the video and have a look at it in greater detail. Now I'm going to give you a little bit more detail about the judges' notebooks. For example, many of Justice Sir James Dowling's notebooks and others have survived and are available at State Records New South Wales, where many of the documents included in Unfit for Publication have come from. Quite a number of his notebooks, all transcribed by contributor David Conolly, are included in Unfit for Publication. I thought it'd be really interesting for you to see how abominable some of the handwriting was that David Conolly had to deal with. I'm now going to take you to the next potential component of a trial included in Unfit for Publication. It's the jail photograph. Many hours were consumed to find these, both humanizing and biographical images at State Records New South Wales. And again, I would like to suggest perhaps you pause the video here to absorb some of the details. The jail photograph of George Harrison, which you have seen on the previous slide, has come from one of those photographic description books you are presently seeing on the slide. And it makes of very interesting reading to open these books. Another makeup of a trial in Unfit for Publication is the newspaper component. Searching newspapers for trial details was much more laborious prior to digitization. Most of the newspaper reports of trial details in Unfit for Publication was done before the National Library's trove came into existence. I realized through putting Unfit for publication together that just looking at text was not an interesting, although a useful exercise. I've included the many illustrations of locations, buildings, or crime scenes to enhance Unfit for publication. Before whites settled Australia, 2 shipwrecked Dutch sailors were tried and sentenced at the Abrolhos Islands on the West Australian coast. They could be described as the first martyrs of our tribe in this land. May I suggest that you stop the video here and have a closer look at the details that are there. Here we have another example of an illustration which enhances the remainder of the typed trial details. For researchers who are interested in spelling and handwriting during a particular era. This splendid 1842 painting provides a historical perspective of the early Sydney days. Many of those found guilty in Unfit for publication were sentenced to Darlinghurst Jail, which you'll find illustrated here. Roach, a married man and the proprietor of the Café de Paris at 123 King Street. He loved the waiter Johns employed by him there. The letter describes much care and tenderness, which is illustrated in 2 different ways, literally and figuratively. This slide provides an aspect of legal procedure and documentation. In conclusion, I hope that the many and varied aspects of this treasure chest have been revealed to you. I also hope you will tune in again when the 3rd and final part, called At the Crime Scene, goes to air in the near future.